Taxpayers may hold the key to fixing the country's liquidity crisis. Martin Feldstein says Spanish households should buy government bonds to shore up confidence in the system. He's been an economic advisor to both US President Obama and President Reagan. He joins us now from Harvard University. Thank you so much for joining us. What's great about your comments is that you're giving some hope to Europeans. So just explain the solution you're suggesting here.
Well, the big problem for Spain is not its trade and current account deficit. That's relatively small. The big problem there is how they're going to finance, finance both their fiscal deficit and the rollover of the debt that's coming due. Those two together will be some 20% of GDP of Spain this year. So that's not going to be easy to do at a time when the banks are under tremendous pressure and when foreign bond buyers of Spanish sovereign debt are walking away. So what I've suggested is that they have a fallback plan in which, if they need to do so, they will actually require households and businesses in Spain to buy government bonds, in effect use the tax system to assess the amount that households and businesses need to buy, but it's not a tax because they will be given in exchange a government bond. And I don't see this as something that should happen, but rather something to be held in reserve. But the fact that it's potentially there should give confidence to foreign buyers and to domestic buyers to actually buy on a voluntary basis.
People would be forced effectively to take on these bonds, right?
Yes, in a sense it would be, you would say it's a tax, except that it's not an ordinary tax where you just send your money to the government and they say thank you very much. Here you send the government the money, but you get in exchange a bond, or the electronic version of a bond, a promise of the government to pay with interest.
The problem with it is politically it's a complete nightmare, isn't it? Because you're effectively taking cash away from people at a time when they need it, even if you're promising future cash. So a political party that enforces this is going to be extremely unpopular, so it's not really workable.
Well, the alternative may be that they can't finance themselves, that they have to turn to the European Commission, which will impose tax increases, spending cuts. I would think this would be a less painful thing to individuals who would say, well, yes, I have to finance this. It may be something they can finance out of existing cash rather than cutting back on their living standard. Finance it because they're getting back an IOU from the government.
And this would be welcome news, I'm sure, on Wall Street, which seems so dominated by talk about what's going on in Europe, and Spain really top of the agenda right now. But if I can talk about the US quickly, we're just hearing from Alison there at the stock exchange, more talk of quantitative easing in the US. Is that the right solution to help the US economy?
I don't think it is. You know, we've now had QE2, and then after that we had Operation Twist, and both of these have helped to lower long-term interest rates and boost the stock market a bit, but they're not doing anything for the real economy. They're not doing anything for economic activity. Housing remains in a slump. Businesses are not investing. Individuals have been reluctant to spend. So it helps the financial markets, and that's why they are cheering for it. But I don't think that it's doing anything for real economic activity.
And what are your thoughts on the quality of the economic debate in the current presidential election?
Well, at this point, they're just sparring. I think the real fact that people will respond to is the state of the economy, and the state of the economy is quite poor. There was a little burst of enthusiasm in the beginning of the year, but that's come off as job growth fell very sharply in the most recent month. as real incomes are falling, real wages are falling. So house prices continue to fall. So it's not a very pretty picture.
Heading for recession?
I think it's too early to tell, but certainly the odds are going up. There was talk of growth of 2.5% or 3% GDP growth, but I think we will be lucky if we get as high as 2%. Last year we only had 1.5%. If you look at the first quarter of this year, while the GDP number was 2.2%, almost all of it, 3/4 of it, was just automobile purchases, catching up for last year's shortages of automobiles. So it doesn't really suggest that there is strong consumer spending on ordinary goods and services, and certainly there isn't on construction or on business investment spending.
Okay,
so that's why there is an increased risk.
Martin Feldstein, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We appreciate your time.